So Aska Naito was an international student from Japan who joined Williston for her junior and senior year and graduated class of 93. After Williston, she graduated from Trinity College and went back to Tokyo to work for Sony PlayStation, then went on to an array of different careers in Tokyo, Nagoya, Miami, and New York. In 2011, she moved to Los Angeles and launched her private coaching practice 7 years later as a modality to contribute to elevating humanity. Aska currently coaches C-suite executives and professionals in global organizations on holistic leadership, intercultural integration, and mindset mastery. Tonight, she'll be presenting on how to live harmoniously during challenging times and tips on keeping stress and burnout at bay as we reimagine 2021. With that, I turn it over and welcome Aska.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for being here. I know that time is precious, and for some, it's late in the evening, so welcome. I'm gonna start sharing my screen so you get to see my presentation. So give me one moment while I do that. Hold on, just 1 second. I think here we go, technical difficulties on my end as well. Here we are, we're ready to share. Okay. So I wanted to pick this topic of how to live harmoniously this year, 2021, because it comes up a lot in my coaching client conversation. We are in a very interesting time. Many of us have many challenges in 2022. So as we resume and inch closer towards normalcy, I think it's very important to address the fact that we've been through a very stressful, traumatic, and out of ordinary situation, because it has affected all of us, from physical to mental to psychological and emotional. However, within all that, and as a coach, we strongly see today's situation as an opportunity for change and transformation. So my hope today is that you will leave here being a little relieved, a little bit kinder to yourself and the achievements that you've accomplished, and with some tools and understanding that will continue to help you live harmoniously this year. So with that, we're gonna go into today's agenda. So I wanna introduce myself briefly and then go over how we see the world today as an external and internal factor. Then I wanna share the concept of choice and mindset, a little explanation around stress and burnout, and then the 1, 2, 3 to build resilience around stress and burnout. And then a little pitch of how to work with me. And like Jill said, some spot coaching and Q&A at the end. So my name is Aska Naito. I'm a professional certified coach by the International Coaching Federation. I'm also an Energy Leadership Index Master Practitioner, which is an assessment, and I'll explain that at the end. And class of 93, and I wanted to share my memories with Williston because this is specific for us alumni. So as an international student, I came to Williston in my junior year. I had kindergarten up until 5th grade education in American education, not in the United States, but in Europe. But I had forgotten that almost from 6th grade to 10th grade, I had kind of skipped an American education. And my first touch point was actually Williston. So you can imagine how difficult that must have been for me as well. But the things that I really hold dearly and cherish dearly is the fact there's 2 things that really come across my mind. One is the balance between academic and sports. That was a big shocker for me that it was almost mandatory. But I played lacrosse and it was my first team coaching. And I thought it was really amazing to have this balance between academia and also sports and team and having a different facade of student life. So that was something that I really cherished even today. And then the second thing that really opened my mind and I still cherish today is the diversity that Williston had. And until then I had lived in Europe, but I really didn't have any touch point or interaction with my neighboring Asian countries. And at Williston, I met my first South Korean friends, my friends from Thailand, Hong Kong, and this eventually took me to visiting Bangkok, Spain, Mallorca, and all these different places. And actually the earrings that I'm wearing today were from my roommate from Spain. Laura-san, who I periodically see when she comes through Los Angeles to see friends in Tahiti. So lifelong friends and many memories, and it really cultivated a mindset of diversity for me. So a little story about who I am and where I come from. Jill did a short introduction, but I'm originally from Japan, Tokyo. And at 3 years old, I moved to Europe, France mainly. And then at 5 to Switzerland, and then back to France at 7. And then by 11 years old, I was back in Japan. My interaction with the US only came when I was 14 to spend the summers there. I spent 2 summers and I was sold, and I said, I want to come to university, but in order to do that, I have to come to high school. And that's when I said, I have to go to a boarding school in Massachusetts. And for the life of me, I don't remember why I thought that, but that's how I came to Williston. So my career, I went from originally starting at corporate. I worked at Sony PlayStation. I actually did an internship when I was in college, and I ended up working there in marketing and PR. Then I moved into another corporate gig in Nagoya. Then I went freelancing, teaching salsa and performing salsa and doing radio and tutoring. So I went this whole different route. And when I came back to the US, I eventually did some PA work with some agents, and then landed a corporate job in 2011, 14, when I moved back to LA. And I had 5 years of account management experience working with media on airplanes. So we would put the movies on airplanes, and my clients were the 2 Japanese airlines, Japan Airlines and All Nippon Airways. So having family, my entire family in Japan, so this was a great job because I would go to Japan 3 or 4 times a year. But I knew that this wasn't my dream job. So in 2016, I really sat down with myself and asked, where do I want to go? What do I want to really do? And I could either go a lateral path, or I could actually create something different. So I decided to go for coaching because I had been mentoring, and I really loved the space of having conversation and empowerment. So I went to coaching program, and I got certified in 2018, launched my own business in 2019, and here I am as a business owner. So one of the reasons why I coach is because of this. I use coaching to encourage deep conversations, to reflect on our vulnerability. Then we integrate and build our authentic self. And whether you are a CEO or if you're a student, this is exactly what I do. We all have these very deep conversations. It's all about integrating, spotlighting some of yourself that you haven't quite been aware of, and building the strength to become our authentic self. So into our material for today, I want to address where we are in today's world, externally and also internally, and how this pandemic has really affected us. As you know, we are still dealing with a lot of uncertainty, the unknown, with which perpetuates fear. And then through that, we reinvent, adapt, and reframe ourselves. So this is what's happening in our external world, and some of the things that we are taking in and acting on. And then the biggest thing that really comes up with a lot of the clients I speak with, and myself included, are the questions that we ask ourselves. What is really important to us? What has not been working out? And I think it's time like this that we really get to ask these questions, because a lot of the distraction and restriction had been removed from us. We are at home in a very compromised situation. And in those situations, I think these questions have probably popped up for many of us during this year. So with that, I want to introduce 2 concepts that I think are really important to address how to live harmoniously. One is the concept of choice. And I describe this as the ability to entertain alternative possibility of our action. So here's my thought around that. Each and every moment is an opportunity to choose a different thought or action. And I really want us to take a moment to really think about this. Each and every moment is an opportunity to choose a different thought or action, which means that you have the opportunity and the capability to change at any given moment. But just knowing this concept of choice is sometimes not enough, because there are different things that really get into our way, which introduces me to the next concept, which are the 2 mindsets. And here's the first mindset that I want to share with you. The first one is the victim mindset. Why is this happening to me? Instead of taking ownership, instead of taking an action, you are reacting to what's happening to you. And here you're already saying, this is happening to me. I'm not at fault. I don't know why, but I feel really upset. And sometimes fear comes up. The other mindset is the owner mindset. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? We say, this is happening for me. And you try to see the opportunity of how you can move forward from there. So you say, Aska, this is all great, but how do we really apply this in our real life? So I want to go a little bit deeper to share what these two mindset means. So the victim mindset, I describe as draining, resistant, destructive, and there's a lot of avoidance, procrastination, not wanting to do stuff. That kind of resides in the victim mindset. So I like working with visuals. So when I explain this to my clients, I usually say, victim mindset is almost like you're in a well. It's deep, it's dark, it's damp, it's scary. You don't know what's going on or how you're going to get out, and you barely see the light and possibility. So that's a victim mindset. On the contrary, the owner mindset is building, healing, constructive, and expansive. So it gives that opportunity to really see what you can do and how you can move forward in situations that might not be ideal. So here my visual is almost like getting into that hot air balloon. And I always think of Napa Valley because this was my hot air balloon experience. But any of you who's been on a hot air balloon, you know that it goes very quickly, and all of a sudden you're in this expansive view that you see everything, 360 view, you're high up there, you see the valleys, maybe you're seeing the sunrise, and you just get this sense of excitement and possibility. Compared to the well where you're barely seeing any light, the hot air balloon really allows you to see the landscape of what you're able to see. And I think those are really important two mindsets to think about, because we can always choose whether you want to install and be in the victim mindset or if you want to take owner mindset. So have a thought about this while we go through the concept of stress and burnout. So what is stress and burnout? We all know this, we've all been through this, we all get triggered by it. But stress is the body and mind's reaction to a challenge or demand. So the reason why I bolded and italicized reaction is because it's exactly that. We react to stress. If you look at incidents or factual incidents, they are just a factual incident. It is how we interact with it or how we react to a situation with our body and mind, emotion and psychologically. That is what creates stress, right? In the past, back in the caveman days, stress was necessary for us for survival instinct. But these days we get stressed out if we're late or we can't do something or somebody's screaming or yelling at you. So it's a different dynamic, yet our brain actually still functions the same. It sends out this message of fight or flight or freeze. And at that moment, all your organs no longer have that blood flow. It goes to your limbs to run. So when you're stuck in that situation for too long, what happens is you experience burnout. So what is burnout? And I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this, myself included. The signs of burnout are exhaustion, negativity or cynicism, and inefficacy. So if you've experienced any of this in the last year, I think a lot of us have experienced exhaustion, overt exhaustion. Some of us have negative views or even cynical views of the world or the situation, where you know that if you were going about do your regular day, it might have not felt that way. And then the ability to concentrate is difficult because you're stuck in the screen all day long, or you're doing more things, or you're juggling. So inefficacy is really, these three combinations combined together is really the sign of burnout. So how do we build resilience against stress and burnout? And obviously we're going to simplify this for the sake of time, but these are the things I usually work with clients. The first one is we must declutter, right? Another visual that I like to talk about when we're talking about decluttering is that, you know, those cords that we have, the wires that we have that get bundled up in a ball, and we don't even know what wire goes where because we have so many gadgets and devices. And it's almost like you have to take each cord out of the ball and then reorganize and understand, do we actually need this? Is this a device that we're actually using? And that process of decluttering really helps to get clarity as to what you need and what you do not need. And here, the important part is we need to recognize what is serving us and what is not serving us. It's almost like we've been wearing this backpack on our back for life. We haven't even opened up and taken inventory of what's inside there. So this decluttering process is kind of the first step that we work on, and we open up that backpack of life. We take it off, we open up, and then we kind of take out everything out and really figure out if we need something or if we don't need something. Is it an old story that's been repeating itself, or is it something that actually is useful in serving you? We want to recognize what that means to you and for you. The second step is about nourishing. And I think all of us can do a better job in this area. Nourishing means the food that you eat, the thoughts that you put in your mind, the people that you have around you, the relationship and boundaries you create, and also the growth that you want to pursue in order to become a better person, a more efficient person, a more creative person, whatever that may be. And in this process, we start understanding, once we've created the space by decluttering the things that we don't need, we have the space to invite, to nourish ourselves. And in order to really build resilience against burnout, we must understand to replenish. It's like we have the gadget, right? This is us. But if you don't recharge, we won't get anywhere. You can't use it. It's done. So just the nourishment doesn't help. We need to understand to replenish. This could be rest. This could be sleep. This could be being out in nature, meditating, taking 5 minutes out of your busy day just for yourself, and really recognizing what that replenishment looks like. And then the third step is really to build, because all this decluttering and nourishing and replenishing is great, but if we're not building ourselves toward a sustainable self, you're just going to kind of go back to decluttering and recognize what is not working out in nourishing, kind of repeating that step without really going forward in the third step. And here it's super important because we want to have sustainability. We want to sustain and continue to become better. So step 1, declutter. Step 2, nourish and replenish. And then 3, we really want to build. So you say, okay, so I get that. How do we do that? So I have 4 easy tips that I want to share with you today. The first one, and I hope we can try this together, is the 5-5-5 breathing. And I know we talk about meditation and mindfulness, and everybody probably knows about this. But this breathing method, if you can remember to incorporate when you really need it, is phenomenal. And it's free and it's easy to do. Probably takes about 2 minutes every time. So if you can join me, let's close our eyes and then take a moment to inhale for 5, hold for 5, and then exhale for 5. And let's do 3 rounds and check in how you feel right now versus when you're done. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And exhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And please repeat this on your own. Inhale, hold, and exhale. And just take a moment to see what comes up, how you're feeling. Do you feel a little bit more settled? Did you invite a little bit more peace? And the great thing about this is you can incorporate this when you're driving, when you get stuck and you feel like you're shallow, your breath is getting really shallow. And start here before doing a task, switching to something else. It's a great method that you can start using. The second tip that I have and I talk about this all the time, is the 3 celebration of self. A lot of times we're so self-critical. We are so judgmental towards ourselves. And sometimes we say things that are extremely mean that you would never say that to anybody that you love or care. So here, maybe at the end of the day, take a moment to ask yourself, what 3 things did you do well today? And really celebrate. You can take this down and write it down as a bullet point on your journal, or you can just say it in your head and just really kind of immerse yourself. This is part of self-care, right? This is part of the nourishment. This is part about the replenishing before you start building. And when you continuously do this, it becomes part of your building process. So try that. I think it really works. The third thing is really stop, right? The permission to say no. Many of us have a habit of overextending because we think we can do more, and we can. But just because we can, it doesn't mean that you have to. And being able to say no, you're only going to be the only person who can actually say no, because nobody else knows your capacity or how much energy you have or how drained or how much replenishment that you need. So being able to say no is super important. And I say this a lot to people who are in the service or education or people interactive vocations, because we tend to reach out a little bit more. And it's okay to say no, because what we want to do is we want to put that oxygen mask on yourself first. So then you can put it onto the people that you really care. You have to replenish yourself first in order to have your tank full, so you can be all that you can to help others. And the last one here is really taking the micro steps every day. You can do the breathing, you can celebrate yourself, you can practice saying no, you can really replenish and nourish, go out to nature and do something that's very mindful for you. But it is the building process of these micro steps. Even if it's one thing that you do a day, if you do it cumulatively, it's going to be 365 times that you do it in a year. And we usually judge ourselves if we haven't worked out or gone to the gym, but it's the micro steps. So instead of depleting ourselves and minusing that we didn't do it, the way that I want to visualize this is think of a kid's piggy bank. And every time you do the 5-5-5 breathing, or you celebrate yourself, or you say no to things that you really infringe on your boundaries, put that penny in that virtual piggy bank and count those times that you've done something, because that's the most important part. So these are the 4 steps, right? You can use the breathing, the celebrating self, understanding your boundaries and saying no when you feel overextended or when you need the rest, and then continuously take these micro steps to move forward and build. So we're coming to an end, and I just want to quickly talk about how I coach and what I do and how you could work with me if you are interested. We talked a little bit about mindset today. So I do a mindset assessment. It's called the Energy Leadership Energy Leadership Index assessment. And what we do is we discover your attitudinal blueprint. And this is a 2-hour deep dive. We kind of go in and you do your assessment. And once you take your assessment, you get a report. And we really talk about 2 aspects of yourself: the energetic capacity of what you have on any given day, which we call the default mode. And then the other one is what happens to you when you get triggered by stress, which is all of us. And how do we manage that conversation within ourselves and become more mindful and have a different mindset on how you want to show up. So this is very useful for CEOs and leaders, but it's also very useful for anybody who wants to learn a little bit more about themselves and what they get triggered with. And today we only talked about 2 mindset modes, but this actually breaks into 7 different levels. So you get each different perspective depending on the levels that show up. So that's one way to work with me. And then the other one is the one-to-one coaching. And I really focus on the self-identity integration, because I think we all have different parts of ourselves, some that we love more than others, some that we really don't want to interact with. And I think really able to integrate all those different aspects of yourself is really important. So this is a private coaching package that I usually curate around the needs of the client. And it's about mapping out your journey to integrate your authenticity using that 1, 2, 3 steps about decluttering, nourishing, and building. And I also do a lot of group coaching specific. Right now, we started a group coaching that's specific to Asian women professionals about how to really use their cultural heritage and integrate them into being a leader, a better leader. So I do a lot of that kind of work as well. But it all starts with here, a 30-minute intro call. And this is usually complimentary. And if any of you had some thoughts or wanted to discuss something or interested in coaching, please email me at aska@askanaito.com with your name, phone number, time zone, and we can set up a call. Fortunately, I will be moving to Dubai for the month of April. So this might be happening more in May. Time zone wise, it's a little bit difficult to align with the US time zone, but please send me an email if this interests you, and I will be happy to get to know you. And no strings attached. It could be just a fun 30-minute conversation to get to know a little bit about yourself and how we can maybe work together. So that is our end. I thank you very much. And it looks like we'll have some time to do some spot coaching. But if you want to reach out to me, my email is aska@askanaito.com. I have a website, same thing, askanaito.com. And I also have an Instagram that I sometimes post. So I'm not very active, but at Aska Naito. So thank you very much. And I would be happy to take questions later on. And anyone who might be interested or brave enough to do some spot coaching.
Great. Thank you so much for that. If everyone has rejoined sort of in a group, if you want to take a moment and set yourself to gallery view so we can all see one another. After a presentation, it defaults to speaker view. So if you go up to the right-hand corner of your screen and return to gallery so that we're all together. Thank you, Naito, Aska. That was fantastic. I have like a million things swirling around in my head. So many thoughts, but I will defer to some of the others here. And I would think that some brave soul might eagerly raise their hand and volunteer to sort of be a demonstration person on what it's like to be coached. So, and again, this could be something around work. This could be something around life. This could be some way that, the pandemic has you feeling stuck and not yourself. Do we have any brave volunteers?
So, yes.
Helen? Oh. Helen's raising her hand. Okay. We have a brave volunteer. Helen, go ahead.
Hi, Aska. Thank you for doing this. When you started talking about burnout, I didn't realize that I was experiencing burnout, but I think I might be.
Yeah.
So I actually, full disclosure, I actually work at Williston with Jill, and great place. I'm not an alum. I wish I was, because it's such a wonderful school and a community. But so our office has been working predominantly from home for this past year. And I do go into the office now and then, but I realized as you were talking that I basically start working at 8 o'clock in the morning. And because my desk is literally right next to my bed, I am working all day long. So I think I'm experiencing burnout. And on top of that, my husband's home working remotely and my 2 teenage sons have been doing remote school this whole time. So you really struck a chord with me. So if you want to spot coach me, I'm free.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you mentioned that you may be feeling burnout, and maybe this hasn't quite been a recognition until we had these conversations. And that happens a lot. We almost don't find ourselves having that conversation and identifying that, I'm burnt out, because it's a natural kind of progression of spiraling. We're a little bit more stressed out. There's a little bit more things to do. So my question here is, what would you like to do now that you've sort of identified that maybe you might be overextending yourself?
I mean, I guess for me, I guess because working at home and having my family here throughout the day causing all of these, distractions, I need to figure out a way to really, when I'm at work doing my work, but it's also causing me to extend my day longer. So I really need to learn how to focus better during the day and not let what's happening behind me affect me.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, when are the moments that you feel the most distraction?
Well, I mean, I have remote school going on. So in between all their classes, all of a sudden there's commotion happening. And I live in a very small house too. So, if I'm working on something, then I get pulled into that. And then lunch is being made, and my husband's a teacher, so he comes in with other things happening. So it's when the rest of my family is calling for me. Yeah.
Right, right. And do you think that takes away a little bit of your focus from being present for yourself as a professional?
It definitely does. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So if you could imagine a different scenario of how you would ideally like to work in this situation, granted that the house is still the same, the space is the same, and the activities are the same, what would you like it to be?
I guess I kind of want a whole different, the other part when you were talking about decluttering also, were you talking like physically decluttering the space around you? Or
yes, it's all all included.
We've been home this whole year, so on top of all the commotion and everything happening, I feel like clutter is also, there's an avalanche around me. So I kind of might need to just kind of change my space, my physical space, and try to remove myself from the situation somehow.
Yeah. And absolutely what you're saying makes sense, right? Because when you feel cluttered in space, you can't quite focus on the screen, which you have to stare for a very long time, I'm sure, like everybody else. And then you're getting pulled into all different directions because of the people that are actually in the same space. So focus, attention is already deprived. You're not quite settled in Zen, right? As we call it. You're not in a Zen space where you can really focus and concentrate and feel good. So I'm just going to regurgitate what you mentioned. Maybe it's a good idea to declutter the space around your workspace, right? And that's a very interesting, I think a lot of people have done studies around this, that uncluttered space really allows you to create that space to be creative and really progress forward and being efficient, right? Because you have very little distraction visually. And I think that's one thing that we take for granted, that maybe in the office it was easier because there was a separation and you're kind of walking into a different space and you're going out and it's easier to get out, or maybe you have a change of scenery, and that off and on switch can be easily sort of applied. But when you're stuck in one space and then there's a lot of commotion in the back,
switch, yeah.
Yeah, there is no switch. And maybe you're like turning on multiple switch at the same time. So being mindful of the fact that you may be pulled in, but how can you recenter yourself back into and say, okay, now I'm Helen. I'm working for Williston, not the mom, not the wife, right? And really separating that space. How does that sound?
That sounds good. And I think this weekend I might actually clear everything out of here and start on Monday.
Yeah.
move it into their spaces, I think. So I think that'll at least give me a fresh outlook on the space that I'm in. I think it'll help. Yeah.
Beautiful. So I'm so happy that you've came to this conclusion, right? The cluttering may really help. And what you're going to probably find, and I would love to hear more about this, is once you start decluttering your space, you're going to be allowing to create space for yourself to then say, oh, what else could I be doing that's going to really help me focus and center, right? Oh, maybe I'll apply that 5-5-5 breathing and just breathe before I look into, going from one task to another. Just kind of create that virtual separation in your head and your mind. What can you do that's going to is it like listening to a peaceful music? I think everybody has a different method of doing that. So kind of be curious and ask yourself, like, how do I need to set myself up? So I always think of pro athletes, like what do they do before they go into a race or a competition or something? Like how do they really like pump themselves up and put themselves in the optimal efficiency mode, right? The performance that they can really perform. And maybe through that decluttering process, you can get curious and start asking yourself like, oh, this really resonates with me. Oh, this makes me feel good. Oh, maybe I'll make some tea. And that meditative moment of like making tea can also be a practice of mindfulness. And that, you can turn off the switch during that moment and just be Helen, not the mom, not the professional, not the wife, but you can just be you.
Yeah.
So I would love to, I would love to hear more how that goes for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for your bravery. And one thing that I really want to share is a lot of us, myself included, we don't know how tired, exhausted, and burnt out we are. And it's that recognition that's really important, because once we recognize, we can do something about it. When we don't recognize and keep on going that route, that's when we really get, and then something happens, right? Either your health happens, or you have a mental blockage, or something happens that's so big that now you have to address it. It's a way of your body telling that okay, now we're flat. We need to really do something about it. So thank you so much for recognizing, and good luck on your process. Yeah, great, wonderful.
Great. Do we have another person who's now curious about this and maybe wants to have a little quick realization about themselves?
Could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Thank you. First of all, I apologize. I was a little late. I was on another Zoom thing that went longer. But just to, and thank you very much for doing this. But just to kind of follow up on decluttering, my personal living space is a little more cluttered than I'd like to. And for example, I have probably, I'm just looking at my shelves right now. I probably have 400 or 500 books. And as I get older, I have to face the reality that I'm never going to get around to reading all of them. But a lot of them are things that I'm interested in. I would theoretically like to read someday. So do you have any advice on sort of making those decisions about, something that you don't really want to get rid of, but you kind of have to, just because you only have so much physical space, and you need to kind of, simplify the physical space to kind of make yourself feel better when you're in the physical space?
Yeah, so thank you, Joe, for sharing that. And I think that's a really great question. I was seeing some heads being nodded, and myself included, because we're traveling with 3.5 suitcases. So I've had to part with a lot of my books. And precisely, there are books that have not been read, but I don't want to let go. And I'm in this huge dilemma myself to figure out, do I give it away? Do I do something about it? And yes, I think Marie Kondo, she is the tidying expert, absolutely. And I think one thing, Joe, that maybe you could ask is, what do you want to do with these books? I mean, obviously we want to, ideally, you said, if I have the time, I would like to read them through. If you don't have the time, and if you haven't done it, then how can you create more space? One is to actually really take the space to be able to read these books, but you have to take the action to actually curate that time, whether it's 15 minutes a day, whether it's 20 minutes a day. And then the other books that you don't, you know that you're not going to get through, have that realistic conversation and kind of have a relationship with each book. I mean, this is kind of like the KonMari way, but ask yourself, like, does this book bring me joy? And if so, why? Is it because I like looking at it, because I like its existence, or has some memory that you trigger each time you look at the book? Or is it because you think that it's just a collection? And I think getting a little bit more clarity around what each of these books represent to you might be a really great starting point. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but I think that's a really great way. And yes, she has a Netflix series, Marie Kondo, the tidying expert, and she goes through a process, and I think she does close first, and then basically you dump everything in one space, and then you pick up each item and you go, does this bring me joy? And then you kind of sort through. So Joe, share with me what comes up for you right now.
In terms of specific books, or?
Yeah. When you think of these books that you have, 400, 500 books is a lot. So what comes up for you about whether keeping it or parting with it or organizing it in a specific way?
I guess it's two things, really. One are books that like just randomly I have like a history of the Kennedy administration. I'm just looking around here. I've never read Don Quixote. I have a copy of that. So, these are all things that I'm kind of vaguely curious about that I wouldn't mind learning more about. But then the other group are books that were given to me, as, birthday gifts or Christmas gifts or things like that. So if it's something that someone took the time to pick out for me, I don't want to, it feels wrong to to cast it aside. Even though I live in an area that has a lot of those little, those book kiosks where you can leave a book for free and take one
Right.
for free. So there are probably about a half dozen within a short walking distance from where I live. But I still, even though I could imagine someone else may be benefiting from a book that was given to me, I still, because someone took the time to give it to me, I'm reluctant to part with it.
Yeah, so that's a really great thing that you've raised. Gifts, right? A lot of the times we get gifts and sometimes we cherish the memory or the intent and the thought, but you know that the item itself is not something that you want to keep. And I think what Marie Kondo says in her gifting or the memorabilia item is to put it in a box of all the things that you want to keep because they were gifted and kind of put it away in a nice place where, those stay because you've decided that you were going to keep them. So that's one way I think of interesting way of looking at things. Another thing for me that's worked out, this is more of a personal conversation than a coaching conversation, is I've had either regifting, like Chuck says, I've actually given them away. So I've had really great books that I wanted to keep, but physically I cannot have them with me because I put everything in a digital and I don't really like digital books yet. I love the physical books. So it's hard for me to part. But I say, I read it, I loved it, or I'm only I've only went halfway through, but I'm sure this person can really make use of this book and kind of give it another life. So I think how you see parting might be a really interesting place if you would be interested in coaching. Not today, but that's an interesting place to kind of think about, all right, how do I really think about these gifted books or these books that I want to read? And do I realistically think there is going to be a time that I'm going to be reading it? And then kind of figure out where you stand with it and then make the decision whether to keep it. Maybe you can rearrange them and organize them in different places so you don't see all the books, but have a section and category of what they mean, and then slowly starting the process of either decluttering or regifting or putting them away or reading them, I think might be a great start.
All right, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's great. So we've had a work question, a lifestyle question. What else is out there that's coming up for people?
This is excuse me. This is Melanie. I have a question on being a parent and setting boundaries with kids that are young. So my kids are I have a 14-year-old who's almost 15, if she makes it, and I have a set of 10-year-old twins. And so it's that, I guess it's that guilt of I need to be available to them all the time, but I can't be available to them all the time. So it's that dance of, because they come to me. So I am the emotional carrier of everything. So all of the emotional problems, issues, mommy, I'm feeling, mommy, I was feeling, mommy, I carry that. So emotional is more difficult than the quick answers of, daddy, my bike is broken. Okay, that's a quick fix, but I get the emotional stuff. And how is it we can set those boundaries that respect me first, and then kind of help them to learn how to set boundaries for themselves?
Yeah, so thank you, Melanie. I think that's a really great question and probably a conundrum for many parents, right? Because especially at a time, I think kids, especially with the pandemic, they need more because they are also very exhausted and they've been going through a lot. So my question to you would be, what would it look like to create this boundary? Without thinking about the aftermath of what the kids will feel or how it would be, what would you need?
I probably would need, the younger two, because they're 10, would probably need a physical cue of, because now I get a lot of if they see I'm relaxing, mommy, I'm sorry, mommy, so then that guilt is layered on top of the guilt that I already have of I'm relaxing when there's clothes that need to be folded. There's always something that needs to be done. And so now I get the mommy, I'm sorry to disturb you, but so there's that's the layered guilt. And I know they're not doing it on purpose, but I hope they're not, because if they are, they're growing up to be evil masterminds. But I would hope that they're not doing this on purpose. But I think that that's just their way of saying, you know, so it would need to be a physical tell. Like, okay, let's keep our minds as G-rated as possible, but hanging something on the doorknob, let's keep our minds as G-rated as possible. You know, as far as like an indicator of this is mommy's time. So let me hang something like a scarf or something to say mommy is in her room, she's in her space. If you're not dying, bleeding, or if nobody's killing you, then bring it to me in however many minutes or whatever time might be helpful to tell them that I just need a minute, because then I don't want the layered guilt of the apologies that I'm taking your time. Because then that's another layer of guilt, and guilt can move into shame very quickly. And then the shame storm comes in, and then you overcompensate, and now everybody has ice cream and anything they want from Amazon. So, you know, because we want to do that. So maybe like a physical towel for the older kids, and maybe for the younger kids, and maybe for the older child, like, you know, from this time to this time, just give me a minute. Just give me some time. That might be helpful, because she has a tendency of walking into a room and starting a conversation. I could be watching the most riveting thing in the world, and I'm starting a conversation. So I'm like, before I can even catch up, I have to pause it and be like, yes, five breathing. Yeah. Because they might not make it between the first 5 and second 5.
Brilliant, Chuck. I love this. So Melanie, thank you for sharing that. I think you did not need me at all. You came up with your own conclusion and your own suggestions. And this is the brilliance about coaching. I am not really here to guide. I'm just here to really kind of hold space for you guys to come up with what you internally know is the right thing for you. And I think it's brilliant, right? Creating that visual cue to say, hey, this is mommy time. Mommy needs to recharge and do her thing so I can come here and be everything that I want to be for you guys. And it's not, you know, don't take it personal. Everybody needs their own time. And I hope you can also grow up and honor your own time that's separate from family time, study time. And I think when we're able to explain it to our children for what they can expect, right? So this is expectation management. We want to make sure that they understand how things are. So when you said, you know, I need to put this boundary because otherwise I get this guilt and shame, and they probably don't know any of this, you know, consequence at all that's going on inside of you. So this is more of your own narrative that's perpetuating this feeling, and then you start acting differently than what you want to do. So there's a misalignment into what you want to, where you want to be and what's actually happening. So great awareness around, I need boundary. How do I do that? Mommy time, physical, you know, scarf or towel, but explaining to children at a young age, saying, hey, we all need our own time, and here's how we can engage. And I think, Chuck, you said something brilliant, right? Teach the kids how to honor themselves. Teach the kids to have their me time. Even as a young child, if they're able to, you know, go through life knowing that there's a really sacred space for them to connect with themselves and have me time, I think that's a brilliant tool as a parent and as a human being that you can really share, because they can then see how good it is for you. And then, you know, they're going to mimic and try to do their me time. And I think it's a great way to continuously have harmony and balance.
Thank you for the wonderful question, because I wouldn't have thought about that. And when you said, what can I do? That wouldn't have triggered, because we're on automatic pilot. You know, I feel like they save up everything. So I'm a teacher. And we recently went back into the classroom. So hybrid is fun, let me tell you. And we recently went back into the classroom. So as soon as I hit the door, questions, comments, statements, this is what happened. So I've been sitting in my car in the garage. I don't think that's a good thing, because now I'm hiding from them. But like I'm hiding, like literally for an hour. My husband be like, are you coming in? Leave me alone. Let me do what I'm doing. I got my time, but I wanted them to know that I'm here, but I'm not available to you, because I'm not freely available to you. And I think that is important, because I want them to be able to set those boundaries for themselves in a world that doesn't respect.
Absolutely. And just a suggestion here, maybe, and let me know how this lands for you, Melanie. Instead of saying, I'm not available for you, say, I want to come and connect from the deepest place because you deserve it. But in order for me to do that, we all have to go and recharge. Just like the phone, we have to charge our batteries, right? So mommy's gonna go and charge, and this is how she's gonna do it. It has nothing to do with you guys. This is just a way for me to be able to spend some me time and really kind of explain why this is important. I'm pretty sure, and I'm curious how your kids will respond, one, and then if they'll find that to be a fun thing.
Well, thank you. I will definitely try it. Because next week, I'll try it next week.
This is great. There's a few more people. I mean, I'll jump in. I have a question. And this is more about, I think, how, I have two questions and I'm trying to decide what the better one is, whether it's the one that's more interesting to me or the one that might be more interesting to everyone. So let's go with the one that might be more interesting to everyone, because I know people on this call and I know a little bit of your story. And so you've gone from a very traditional career to a very non-traditional new type of career in coaching, which is entrepreneurial in nature. And at the same time, as you're establishing a new business and a new career, you have downsized in an extreme way from living in a home to living in 3 suitcases, and you're globetrotting in the midst of a pandemic. So I see people on here who are entrepreneurs. I see people who are like going into the classroom. My question is, how do you find the courage to make a big change, to step out on your own, to take a big chance? Where does that kind of courage come from? And can you find it when you are burnt out, which I think we can all pretty much agree is a pending or active stage for many of us. So talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Jill, thank you for that. I think that's a great question. So the courage really comes from the desire to grow. And one of the reasons why I love coaching is because we are always in uncertainty, especially when we are coaching. I don't know what questions you're going to be. I don't know if I can answer or be a good, a reference point for all of you, but I just try to stay in the present and ask myself, what would be the most incredible way to pave myself forward for my maximum growth? That was the decision that I had when I was 15 years old. I said, I'm going to go to the US. That's going to be where I'm going to go to college, because Japanese university does not interest me at all. How do I make that happen? My parents were super scared. They're like, there's guns. I don't know. We can't do this. And back then there were no internet. It was mail, fax, and phone, right? So I understand now as an adult how courageous they were, not me. How courageous were they to allow me to step into it, knowing that if anything happened to me, they have to be okay, that they have to let me go, right? Accidents, crime, whatever happens. So I feel like I learn, and the sense of respect for, what it means to have courage, and then the ripple effect that it has on the people around you. When you're young, you're not so conscious of it, but when you get older, I think you get a little bit more conscious, but not too conscious that if it holds you, if it conforms you too much to take that step, ask yourself, what's holding you back? And I always ask myself that, what is holding me back from stepping into my greatness? How can I optimize? And if I can't, I can't. And then I ask myself again, why couldn't I? Or what would I want to do? Again, we go back to the situation of we always have a choice. But I really think it's the desire to grow that gives me that courage and the exploration. And I've had enough factual data points inside of me to say, it always works out. Somehow it always works out. And I've been very, very, very lucky. So that's your question number one. And the question number two, I forgot what it was. Was it the...
I didn't ask it because I wasn't going to be greedy, but if no one has, I have a follow-up. If no one has...
Yes.
Okay. My follow-up question is, it jumps to a different thing, which is a little bit more about functioning in the day-to-day. And I have found that I am particularly susceptible to decision fatigue. Start out great in the morning, clear on what I'm doing, can make every single choice. By the time I get home, if someone says, what do you want for dinner? I'm like, I don't know. Don't ask me another question. I can't stand it. I think it's gotten worse in this virtual world. I'm feeling like because there's an expectation that decisions are made faster, that there are more required decisions in any given day, and they come in new formats and unexpected ways. So do you have any tips for countering decision fatigue so that you're feeling that you're effective both throughout the day and that you have a little something left in the tank when you have to decide even what you're going to watch on television that night to unwind, like to avoid getting to the point where you just really don't care because it would mean making another decision?
Yeah. So thanks for that. And I completely understand. I have the same thing, you know, once you start deciding so many things, you really get tired about it. So a couple things that come up for me, and I'm just going to give you tips versus coaching, but things that I think work out is play around in that space of not deciding. Kind of like go into throughout the day, take a 1 minute break or 5 minute break and like time yourself and just go, I'm just going to do nothing right now. I'm not going to allow anything to enter my mind right now. And I'm just going to be, whether you're just going to look at some leaves, you know, swaying, or if you're going to listen to music and just be in the moment. So I think decision fatigue can be rectified if you can be just in the present and not allow the need to do anything. So this is like doing versus being, right? Doing is the decision making. Being is just relaxing into the form of Jill, the human being who's breathing and just taking a moment, sipping her tea. So maybe introducing that focal point of just not having to think, right? Because at this point, I feel like you're like, oh, I need to do it. So you're already triggered by stress. And that buildup is really going to be the fatigue that you're creating. So find moments. And if you can do this more often, I think you can start engaging it more often because it's a habit. So we have to create the habit, but maybe do it in the morning when you wake up. Just say, just going to be in this space and get used to it. And then maybe midday. And then maybe when you come home, just take a moment, 5 minutes, where you just empty everything in your mind and do the breathing or just listen to music and don't think of the past or the future, and just maybe be in the present, because it's in that space that when we are able to really connect in that space of nothingness, right? Because you're actually not engaging in the past or what you should have done or what you're going to have to do. I think that's where the kind of like the crunch really starts coming. So it's hard. Trust me, it's a work in progress, even as a coach. Just because we're a coach, it doesn't mean that we know how to do it. And that's why we have to work with other coaches for them to tell us, you know, and work with us. But I really think it's a work in progress, and awareness is the key. So know when you are fatigued, know when you feel like you have that decision fatigue and you don't want to do anything. Don't stop. Give yourself permission to say no. No decision.
I'm very glad this is recorded because I may be playing it back when people later this week ask me for something, and I'm just like, no, just being present at the moment. No answer for that right now.
Yep. And another thing I want to say, buy time. Just say, you know what? Let me get back to that. Because when you feel like you have to decide, I think we want to overcommit, we want to say yes, and then we might be driven by another intention and energy that may engage us to commit to something that is not optimal for us. So again, creating that space and go, you know what, that sounds really great, but let me take a second. I'll get back to you in like 10 minutes, right? And use that 10 minutes to really ask yourself, is this something that I really want to do? Do I have to do it now? Is it important to me, or is there something else that's important for me? And I think that's a great starting point.
Thank you. I think that was good. So I'm being conscious of time, but I'm also really enjoying this conversation and wondering if anyone else, if you feel shy, you can put it in the chat. We're getting some great comments in the chat. Actually, I'm having just as good a time here taking a look at that. But I want to make sure that everyone's had a chance to kind of explore anything they want to explore, take advantage of having a coach here.
Yeah, and let me just say something. As you saw in the conversation with Melanie, a coach doesn't tell you what to do. We just kind of ask questions and allow our clients to really kind of regurgitate what's coming up and be that soundboard. So it's a lot of ping pong playing. And my goal is to not put you in a box or guide you into a direction that I think is good, right? Because that's consultation. So I'm just trying to listen, actively listen for cues of what's coming up. Oh, okay, so she feels like this way. Okay, mental note, check. And then the funny thing is, just like Melanie, they usually come up with their own answers. Like Helen too, you said, I think I want to declutter. That's going to be the first step. Joe, you said, you know, I want to figure out what to do about the books. Keep asking yourself, because a lot of the times, once you start knowing the method of coaching, you can do a lot of self-coaching. I do a lot. I ask myself a lot of questions and I kind of keep it up in the air and then I revisit it. And I think that internal dialogue makes us stronger, gives us more courage, like we talked about, and a lot more mindful. So I just want to close. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate your chats and the interaction, and I hope you stay well. And please be safe, be kind. Let's be kind to ourselves. Pat ourselves on the back that we've been surviving a very difficult year, and this may continue a little bit more. So please bring in that mindful mindset and just take a breath and say, you know what? It's okay. It's okay to just pick you.
I actually feel so much better after this talk tonight. So thank you. We're so grateful that you were able to share your expertise with us and spend time with us tonight.